So I actually wasn't going to ask this until like later chronologically, but since I think it's still fresh in people's minds, I wanted to start with that closing song, Mystery of Me. I find it so poignant that it's from two Chinese American women, Milk and Philippa Sue. Was that written specifically for this film?
It actually was written specifically for the film, and it came from something Chloe said that didn't make the film, but she said, the trip filled in the mystery part of me. And Toby Chu, our composer, who I met for the first time tonight because we've been virtual the entire time. I told Toby and Connie that line, and they turned it into this beautiful song.
It's so lovely and fits perfectly, is clearly from the process. So let's start then. With the very genesis of the film. Tell me, for each of you, how did the story come to you?
Well, Chloe, the bat mitzvah girl, is my niece. And my brother told me, my big brother said to me, we're going to have Chloe's bat mitzvah at the Wall in Jerusalem. And she was going to Hebrew day school and speaking fluent Hebrew. And just all films for me start with that one image that inspires you. And the image of Chloe surrounded by our big Jewish family at the Wall in Jerusalem having her bat mitzvah and everything that had to happen in order for that moment to happen. And all the people that had a hand in it just really inspired me. And then my brother said we found this cousin on 23andMe, and it was the first time I watched Chloe be really curious about her past, and it awakened something in her and all the girls.
That's so amazing, and you could tell because I was like, when did you get that footage? You know, in Jerusalem, because it does seem like it was a few years at least prior to the rest of the film.
It's been almost 5 years.
That's awesome.
And that was the first day of filming. The bat mitzvah was the first day of shooting.
Amazing, serendipitous.
Yeah.
What about you, Anita?
Well, I was lucky enough to join the project after Amanda had done so much hard work, you know, discovering the story, starting to follow the girls, and I think it was a couple years into the filming that we got connected. And from my company, projects can come from everywhere. We meet filmmakers, you know, we work with great people who send us things, and it was just one of those things where, like, I think I watched the sizzle reel that Amanda had put together at the time and immediately cried in the room. It was very unprofessional. I just cried. And then, so it was very much a gut instinct, like, I need to do whatever I can to support this, to help this project come together. And it was sort of at a critical juncture where they were figuring out how to make the China of it all happen, the journey. You know, they were just starting to talk about, okay, how do we even begin the sort of investigation part of this that you see in the film. And lucky enough, you know, we had just come off of the farewell. I had such an amazing time working with our on-the-ground producer in China, Jane Zhen, and we were just eager to do something together again. And so it just felt like, kind of like fate a little bit. Like it spoke to me in so many different ways, you know, personally, and I felt like it was going to resonate with so many people. And so yeah, we met and just hit it off and just felt so on the same page as to how to approach this. And is that 2 years ago? Like,
we haven't seen each other since we left each other in Beijing on January 19th, 2020.
Wow.
Tonight was the first time we've seen each other since.
We wrapped in China, early 2020, and then a week later, like, the whole world changed.
Were you already getting rumblings of the virus? Because I remember here stateside, we were thinking, oh, there's this crazy thing happening in China, happening in Asia. I mean, did that sort of play into any of your time over there?
We didn't know anything about it when we went. I was actually 9 weeks pregnant at the time, and we had no idea. And then when we landed, we started seeing articles.
It was just rumors at the time. I think my mom, who's in Taiwan, sent me some stuff.
Same, my election, right?
Yeah, and I was like, oh, Mom, you know, here we go again. So yeah, I think we left, and you know, every step of the post process, every time we looked at the footage, we were like, we were so lucky to have this film, to have all this with us.
It's really incredible. I mean, I was thinking while I was like, this must have been shot before the pandemic because there's no way you would have been able to travel. But the other ironic thing was that the girls were connecting via Zoom. They were doing Zoom before everybody else did
Yes,
Zoom.
they were, yeah.
Right? Like
now
it's so normalized
used to seeing that, yeah.
And they had their moment of meeting for the first time after getting to know each other for so long. And so much of this post-process has been like, you know, with our collaborators, like, oh, finally, you know, even though we've been working so closely together.
That's amazing. Okay, so just so I know the timeline, the bar mitzvah was 5 years ago. And then, like, the China trip took place, like, literally beginning of 2020, end of 2019. And so what about all the stuff beforehand? Was that the year prior, or how long? When did the girls sort of first find each other on 23andMe, and then that process of putting the trip
Sadie and
together?
Chloe found each other right before her bat mitzvah.
Oh, wow.
And so the parents had communicated. My brother had spoken with Victoria, and the girls had Snapchatted a little bit. And then, you know, I said to my brother and Chloe, I have this idea, and I would like to film the bat mitzvah. And I was just coming off of Step, and they were kind of like, okay, we'll let you film the bat mitzvah. And then I said, what do you think about me going to visit Sadie? And I went to visit Sadie and got to know her and her family, and they felt like family. And then we went to visit Lily, and she felt like family, and I saw each one of the girls just awaken something within inside themselves. You know, I think we all have this dormant curiosity about ourselves that as we grow, those questions become louder and louder, and I felt so honored to kind of watch these girls on that cusp of womanhood, that time where you're really changing and you're really growing and you're really questioning and trying to find the courage to find out who you are.
Definitely. And when did Liu Hao come into the picture? Was that the girls who found her, or, you know, how did that work out?
There's a lot of companies around the world that, you know, offer adoption research. And for the families, it was very important that they found someone that was more focused on genealogy and connecting to your culture, and, you know, not so, you know, it wasn't all about finding birth parents, right, because it was a journey of self-discovery more than anything. But we did not know when the girls started speaking with Liu Hao her story. So when I stood on the bridge with her and she told us that story, I thought, this is the other side of it. This is a perspective we haven't heard. This is a young woman growing up in China, and what she has to say, what the other side of it was, and the connectiveness of the silent trauma that they've all gone through, but they don't remember because it happened to them when they were young. So I just, you know, it's the kind of thing, when Anita talks about fate, it really was, you know, it was just fate that she connected with the girls, and she was the person that began to work on their story.
It's incredible, their connection. And it was interesting, too, for me, like, as an ABC, and I don't know, you know, what your background is, Anita, but I've always wondered, right, like, it's almost like a parallel life. How would my life be different? What would I look like if my parents hadn't immigrated, or if, you know, and so being able to see this connection between Liu and these three cousins, it gives you a glimpse, right, of a parallel possibility, which was stunning. What were the production logistics involved in terms of, I mean, you're telling, up until China, it's 4 different stories happening in 4 different parts of the world. How did you have simultaneous, like, crews going on, or?
Yeah, somehow we pulled it off. But yeah, I think, you know, as doc filmmakers, and Amanda even more so than I am, like, it's run and gun. You just try and wear multiple hats, right, within your crew. And, you know, in China, we were lucky enough to have such a great team on the ground who, you know, we would do sort of simultaneous filming across time zones, and yeah, and just I think everybody was so devoted to capturing it the right way, and what Amanda mentioned about the different perspectives was really important to us too. So I think that helped us sort of ensure that, okay, we want to be there from multiple angles, you know, with capturing the certain moments. So yeah, it was it took a really strong
I went to China
team.
a lot.
Yeah.
and Oklahoma and Nashville and Phoenix. So I went, and my crew would be, we'd be together, or I would be in China and they would be in Oklahoma, and we just made it happen before COVID and Zoom and all of this.
Yeah, we figured out simultaneous translation.
Yes, a lot of times when you see the girls, you see everyone wearing headphones. I didn't feel the need to explain it, but I'm explaining it now, which is they were listening to a translator.
They weren't being rude,
and they were not being
listening
rude.
To Spotify, because you're in this incredibly important
those
moment.
Moments of meeting for the first time and whatever, they were going to be so emotionally charged. So it was really important to us to figure out the communication part of it, to be as smooth as possible, and it worked out.
Chloe's good at Mandarin, but not that good.
That's so awesome, though, that sort of the filmmaking process ended up facilitating the quality of the experience that the girls had. And so I'm assuming that with the Chinese crew, the local crew, you used a lot of the connections, or maybe the same people that you had, Anita, while doing the farewell. Mm-hmm. What about the process of, I'm assuming that, there were conversations in getting, your own family on board, yes. Sadie and Lily's. What about getting the permission from those Chinese families who were looking for their children? How were you guys able to do that?
I think Liu Hao, as you can see in the film, she played a big role in that, because it was really organic, right? Because we would follow her research, and wherever that took us, we would go. Mm-hmm. And she sort of always was the front of it, and the face of it, and through her really. Building the connection with the family, and then also getting to know them and their desire, right, to use this as a conduit to hopefully find some answers and to their questions. I think we were able to quell any concerns in light of the greater good of mm-hmm. that works for both sides. But yeah, I think we had such a great team that helped navigate that with, a lot of sensitivity. Mm-hmm. But Liu Hao, because she was so good about, that's what makes her so good at her job, is that she's always thinking about, the human aspect of it first more than anything. And so that helped us ease into the conversation every time with these subjects.
And the girls as well. They knew that their emotional well-being was mm-hmm. more important than any filmmaking. And they knew that the whole time. And we were constantly checking in and making sure that with the girls and the parents and each other. And, they were the ones that gave us courage to keep going. And the parents in China and the nannies, and the fact that they were so strong and wanted so desperately to tell their stories, gave us the courage and strength. And everyone's courage kind of fed off of everyone else. It was really beautiful.
The incredible thing about documentary filmmaking is you don't know the outcome before you get to it, and so you're finding everything out in real time. And with this subject in particular, these girls, all four of them really, they're also kind of, it's a mystery for them. What surprised each of you guys the most in the process of making this film?
There's so many. The happiest surprise was how much they got along immediately. That chemistry that hopefully you can feel on screen, that was just there from day one, and it's even more fortified when we were on the ground together. We talked a lot about the documentary gods, sort of helping us. Without that, I don't think we would have felt so emotionally compelled, and that kind of instant sisterhood that they had. I think that's such a big part of what you don't know, right? You put the circumstances together, you go where the moments are happening, and you hope mm-hmm. that it plays out in an emotional way. And I think they really inspired us, and with how much they were able to connect with each other, and we just I feel really really happy about that aspect of it, that it came so naturally.
I would agree with Anita. I say it was like watching them fall in love with each other. And as an aunt, you kind of step out as a filmmaker, and you're just so happy that someone you love has someone that really understands. The other, for me, is, I love to tell human stories with real beating hearts underneath. So meeting the nannies and meeting these moms and Mr. Chen and his daughter, and hearing their side of the story, just like what you were saying, the other perspective, that what they had to say surprised me. Not that I didn't know, but it always caught me by surprise when the nanny says, we don't have dreams.
Yeah.
And now we throw away leftovers, and you realize the world they were born into and the world now. And that difference really inspired and surprised all of us.
Yeah. You mentioned Mr. Chen, and I thought that was one of the most, honestly, heartbreaking parts of the film when, the Chen family and Lily don't match. I don't know what Liu's success rate is for finding matches. It feels like a literal needle in a haystack, but how surprised, or shocked were you guys by the outcome? Because as soon as I saw the Chen family's daughter, I was like, well, they found her.
They also, they live 10 minutes from the finding place, walking distance. And so that was the proximity and the time and everything. We were really.
Yeah, I think we wanted to be hopeful but also knowing, right? Even though I think we all know that the chances are really slim. So it was a balance of hope, but also not wanting to get everybody's hopes up too much. And yeah, it was I think we were all really shocked by it. But at the same time, I think as the filmmakers, we wanted to be temper our expectations too.
It also, we just really wanted to be about self-discovery and filling in the pages of your story. And for everyone that looks different. And so it's more of the journey and not, these kind of specific outcomes we were looking for.
It feels like one of the arcs that sort of that real life incident ended up serving was felt like it gave Chloe some sort of healing in terms of going from the trauma of her classmate saying that awful thing about her birth parents to actually getting to meet somebody else's birth parents and understanding things from their perspective. It felt like it sort of helped. She experienced growth from that. Absolutely.
And what they all want changes at any given moment and will continue to change throughout their lives when they get married, when they have their own children. That's just how it is. As women, we always shed our skin. We're shedding our skin over and over. We're becoming someone else, and what we want or what we dream of will change. So that's what I think the girls are still going through to this day and will continue to go through.
Exactly. They're I mean, like all of us, a work in progress. Our perspectives will evolve. I am curious whether or not there are any updates to either any of the three of them, or even are they continuing to search, or if you can share.
It's still, it's an ongoing process. Yeah. I think it really depends on the day. Amanda Phillips did, the young woman at the end that connected with the dressmaker. She has spoken with her birth mother on several occasions, and they've connected. Obviously, it's not possible for them to see each other right now because the way the world is, but it certainly has given her some healing. But tough, I mean, one of the moments when the dressmaker says she speaks English, I don't speak English, and you understand that barrier. But luckily, the technology today again makes it a lot easier for people to communicate and connect. And there's this ancient Chinese proverb that always really inspired me about the invisible red thread.
Yeah.
And it connects everyone, and it's around your ankle when you're born, and it may stretch, tangle, but it's never broken. And I think that's the thing I found. And you guys are our first audience. We haven't seen it in front of an audience before. So watching it tonight, and seeing the connectivity between all of these individuals, I really saw that red thread a lot.
Yeah, it's a concept of destiny, which I think you alluded to earlier, Anita. 缘分, the people that you share a destiny with, you are connected by an invisible red thread, no matter where you are in the globe. And I think that image provides some hope, maybe.
And by the way, that is also a Jewish thing. I just want to tell you that. Yes, red ribbon is very lucky in Kabbalah, so there's something going on with the red thread, for sure.
Chloe was fated to be part of your family, right? That's awesome. How many, I'm just curious because you mentioned Amanda Phillips, and that at the end, when I was screening, previewing the film, I was like, how many people does Liu work with at the same time? I mean, she's traveling everywhere, visiting people in person, in remote villages. At what point did that connection happen? And, was it at the end, or was it like you kept it in your pocket and were like, this is the perfect note to end the film on?
Which one with Amanda Phillips?
Yes, the dressmaker and Amanda Phillips matching.
I always wanted to end the film on that, and I always wanted it to be a coda, and I love a coda in a film, and I like to catch everyone a little bit by surprise. You think it's over, but I also really wanted to magnify my title. I struggled really hard. We struggled with the title of the film. And then I just said, it is found, because they found each other. They were found. We found Liu Hao. Liu Hao found all these people. And I wanted it to be this positive, they were not lost. They were found. And that was really, I felt like ending the note on, those two moments of what it means to feel found was really important to me at the end.
It's such
a agree. I always wanted to end it that way, right?
Yeah.
Jolt of energy. Like I think at that point when it was emotional and joyful and also it feels like a beginning,
yes.
Right? That's amazing.
And there's so many young women out there with this story, similar stories. So many people who are adopted who can, the details may be different, but the journey is still the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely, exactly. And I think even just in, with the three girls, with Lily, Sadie, and Chloe, and seeing that they clearly have similarities, but they're so different in the way they grew up and their perspectives and things like that. And I was actually going to ask you, Anita, because these are three very different Asian or Chinese American women, four really, including Liu, if you just talk about Chinese women. And from what I've been learning recently about the perspectives of transracial adoptees, and they all have there's such a range of experiences of the way in which they relate to their racial or ethnic identity, to their, culture of origin. I'm curious about what struck you personally the most about the film's varied and very broad depictions of Asian women, and is there a message about that identity that you'd hope to convey with the film?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things that struck me when I first got to know Amanda and the story was the smattering of girlhood, right? This pivotal time, coming of age, and the different ways that these three girls represented that aspect of life. And I think one of the things that's so important to the community now more than ever that is at the forefront of the conversation is visibility, right? It's that you have to see it to validate it and to know how dynamic these lives are and all of their different experiences. And that I felt like this, the story and the three girls presented such an amazing opportunity to not even, and on top of that, I think telling it in a verite way, in a documentary way, was even more important because you're really just diving into the real lives and the lived experiences, and we just don't get to see enough of that, right? That's an ongoing conversation of how do we get more of that, and because we know more than ever, there's a direct correlation between what you get to see and then how people respond in, everyday life. So that was always such an important aspect of this too, beyond just, the adoption aspect of it, the story, was to get to see how, despite their connections and their age, similarities and all that, they all come from still, they're informed by different things in their lives, right? And that they all have different dreams, and, Lily's going to be an accountant, and Chloe's learning men, and they sort of, want to discover themselves in different ways, and I think that was really important to show.
It made me really excited to think about, where they'll be in their own identity evolution, 5 or 10 or so years from now, because the conversations that I think it was Sadie was having with her friend.
Oh, yeah. You speak Chinese.
Yeah,
that's
and
my favorite.
You're the least Chinese person I've ever met, and then Chloe and her friend who was also adopted, and then talking about what that means to them, and just knowing having people in my life or adults that I know, just that journey. It's it's just beginning,
I also think just out of the mouths of babes, I think young people have a way of talking about these intricacies of life that adults don't always have. And so we really hope that this fosters a lot of conversations with young people about when you don't look exactly like your parent, or when you're a different race, or when you're the only person of color in your family, and how does that feel? And those moments, like the moment you talked about with Chloe, you're either the receiving end or you're the one saying it. And so how does that change your perspective as a young person? And I'm excited for families to watch the film, a whole family to really sit down, all generations, and have a real conversation about what it means to find out who you are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. And to have, like, I don't know, your found family, yes. Your family of origin, to, pun not intended, but yes. It works, right?
Yes. This is why we kept the title, because it always keeps coming up. Where were you found? Where was I found?
It works. It works on a lot of levels. How do you find yourself,
right.
Well, I'll close on, a very broad question for each of you, which is, there are a lot of themes, there's a lot of ideas, in this documentary, but what is one of the themes that has emerged from this film that is the most resonant to you?
That's a great question. Gosh, I think something I keep coming back to as the whole process of working on this was the idea of courage, right? And that courage can manifest in very different ways. And obviously we're all very familiar with the superhero depictions, but I constantly found myself so touched and inspired by just seeing how much courage they had to do this, right? To connect with each other and to go out there and search for this. And I think it's that, you can be your own hero, right? You can believe in yourself, and you can sort of do what feels scary, but then it's worthwhile, and you inspire others. I think that was something that really came through as we were piecing this narrative together, in celebration of them and what they accomplished, but also hoping that would resonate really far and wide too, especially with younger audiences too, who might be, on some sort of journey that's similar to this.
I mean, Anita and I pretty much always agree. So I really think it's what Liu Hao says when she says you have to have a lot of courage to come back to find out who you are. And that's the thing that we want audiences to take away. And your details will all be different. Everyone's details are different. But, going back to where we started with the song, this mystery of me, you don't have to be adopted from China to have this song mean something to you and to want to fill in. Chloe has talked to me about filling in her baby book.
Oh, wow.
And that's what, this trip did for her. It filled in that baby book, those little moments that you just don't know about and you don't remember, but, hearing it from someone else, when she speaks with her nanny and her nanny says, I knew her nanny remembered her when she says, you never cried and you were outgoing and alive, because that's exactly what she was like when my brother adopted her at 15 months old. So being able to fill in those little parts, we just hope everyone sees the film and finds that courage that they see in these 4 women.
I love that. And I think I'll just add, since I have Mike, that for me, one of the things that's emerged when I watched it and hearing you guys talk is, to me, this film is such an affirmation of the inherent value of girls and the inherent worth of women, right? It's very, again, it's very emotional, right, to think about what so many of these girls went through, the circumstances that led them to that, but also to understand and see the perspective that you shared from those parents on the other side who were looking and searching, that these girls are loved and they are, worthy of love. And so it's such a beautiful film. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you for being our first
for watching
audience.
And supporting the film.
Thank you so much.